often reminded that life is not like the movies. The magic of Hollywood stays behind the silver screen, so they say. But there are exceptions to every rule. One way in which art mirrors life is with respect to friendship. The boys in Stand By Me never sought each other out, and they had very little in common. Anne didn't know what she was going to find in Green Gables, yet she and Diana instantly swore an oath of friendship. In Toy Story, Woody never sent out a mail order to purchase Buzz, yet they became an inseparable duo. Such was the case with Jade and myself. Whenever we would tell people that we were best friends, people would either assume that we were dating, or they would look confused. As unlikely as our friendship was, it nevertheless began as most great friendships do. Just like the characters in those 3 movies, Jade and I just happened to end up in the same place at the same time, and discovered that we could relate. We had both enrolled in a writing class in high school. Since we're on a roll making movie analogies, this was very much like our own mini Dead Poet Society. On the very first day I saw Jade walk in. As a brand new sophomore, I had made a vow to myself that I would never poke fun at others for being freshmen, because that kind of thing always annoyed me. Well, as soon as Jade walked in, I saw the way she was clutching a notebook to her chest and how her eyes were nervously darting around. The first thing that popped into my head was, she's definitely a freshman if I've ever seen one. So much for keeping that promise. I told her this weeks later, and she just rolled her eyes and said, "Well, I guess I don't have that sophomore swag." Jade sat behind me, and one of our first in-class assignments was to write down whatever came to our minds. Could be anything in any style, but we had to get it written down. Afterward, we had to exchange with the person next to us and do a critique. As I turned around and we exchanged papers, we both shrugged and chuckled. As it happens, we both hated what we had written down, and so it was mostly a "good luck with this" gesture. Working together on assignments, we got to know one another, and we would discover that we had an understanding. Jade and I both found it difficult to fit in at times. That's not to say that we didn't have other friends, or that we never had any fun mingling with other crowds. Not at all. Rather, we were the kind of people who didn't fit the mold of any in-crowd. We both had our reasons, and they were different for both of us, but this was the basis of our friendship. We both wanted something that was genuine in a world where so much tends to be superficial. That's why friendships like ours stand the test of time. For those who are blessed enough to be able to call someone a best friend, no explanation is necessary. From that early time getting to know one another, Jade and I would stay best friends. Over the years, Jade made many decisions, and some of them were not so good. Even so, Jade never lost sight of what truly matters at the end of the day. Family, friends, and their well-being were always on her mind, even in times when she could not provide. Those who knew her knew that her heart was always in it, even when it might not have appeared that way from the outside. We all know that in life, things often get crazy. Sometimes things go off the rails. Sometimes we end up in situations where things seem broken beyond repair. Jade and I had a total of 2 disagreements in 12 years of friendship. Both times, she never acted bitter. She didn't develop a grudge. She didn't reciprocate being unreasonable. Instead, a few days would go by, and after that, we buried the hatchet. Then, it was as if nothing had ever happened. That's loyalty. Jade had dreams. It's often said that of mice and men, the plans of both tend to go awry. In life, none of us accomplish all of the dreams that we've ever had. Jade dreamt of being a marine biologist. She dreamt of starting a nonprofit support group for teenage mothers. She dreamed of one day owning a homestead with a large garden and chickens. Just after Holmes was born, she and I were on a video call. She was holding Holmes, and we were both marveling at how adorable he was. At some point in the call, she said to me, "Dan, I can't wait until you have kids too. We're going to be a couple of big, happy families." Safe to say, many plans did go awry. While she left behind a lot of unfinished business, there is so much that she did accomplish that I will always remember. Jade was a mother, and she absolutely adored her children. There's nothing more she wanted than to see her kids smiling, happy, and healthy. Whenever I would visit, there would always be smiles on their faces, and those who were old enough would participate in a good game of catch, Uno, or maybe even Clue if we were feeling extra ambitious. Jade had this unique idea of playing the instrumental soundtrack to the movie Clue when playing the game, and it impressed me how much that added to the fun factor. She always came up with very unique ways to make things more fun for the kids, and for us adults as well. Jade was also a talented cook. Some people are born with culinary talent coursing through their veins, and Jade was one of those people. If you handed her some utensils and some ingredients, she could whip up these incredible meals like it was nothing. I'd be talking to her on the phone and she would casually mention that she was going to make something like sweet onion chicken teriyaki with pesto, or something equally as elaborate. I don't know about anyone else, but I'm the kind of person who has to be careful when pouring cereal, otherwise I'll burn it, but not Jade. Jade had a vivid imagination and an unbelievable proclivity for writing. When she was 16, she ran a writing group at the West Warwick Library. There she would come up with prompts and help young adults along developing their own talents. Many people would attend in the time she ran it. As a writer, her most notable work is called My Heart in Bleeding Calligraphy. The work, not to be confused with her blog, Bleeding Calligraphy, is an epistolary work of stories and poems, which begins with her running away from home in distress and meeting a man named Charles at a train station. The plot of her encounter with this man named Charles is similar to the biblical tale of two bound for Emmaus. I'm sure that many have already guessed who this mysterious man named Charles is, and that's okay, because the folio page gives the messianic secret away when it reads, quote, "Thank you, Dad, for always reminding me to reach for the stars." End quote. Jade was courageous. She was never afraid of pain or struggle. I'm not going to name any specific examples here because it simply would not be appropriate for me to do so, but Jade could carry herself through anything. Those of us who are close to her know exactly how strong and determined she was. Mrs. Gillooly put it best when she said, "When Jade wants to do something, she's going to end up doing it." If you don't believe me, then consider this more light-hearted example. At some point, Casey had won a year's supply of Oreo cookies. How and why? Well, that much I don't know, but I arrived at school one day to find Jade's backpack stuffed to the gills with Oreos. She would snack on these throughout the day, and in the end, she would end up eating the entire year's supply of Oreos in about 3 weeks. With heaven as my witness, she didn't gain a single pound. Don't ask me how, although I imagine cross-country had something to do with that. I should also note that I didn't find out until years later that the cookies belonged to Casey. I didn't question where Jade was getting the money for a mortgage payment's worth of cookies. Again, if she wanted to do something, she was going to do it. We would still laugh about this up until the very end. As a writer, writing about a fellow writer, I have to say that the most painful part about writing is the ever-present reality that some things cannot be expressed through words. One can try to pen the image of a person and all of his or her worth, but it doesn't matter how many notes get jotted down. It doesn't matter how many times a draft gets revised. It doesn't matter how many techniques are employed or how many tricks we pull out of our sleeves. The truth is, the value of a person, the value of a human being, cannot be expressed verbally. The best we can do is express elements. Jade once wrote a short poem that does just that. It's titled Vita, as in the Spanish and Italian word for life. And it reads, "I wonder why no one can smile in all of life and its beguile. Life is something I perceive as something to receive. Within these things I call eyes, I see my ultimate demise. But even so, Through all the woe, I live in utter blissfulness. I want to show the earth something I have heard, and that is, life has worth. Though you stand with your head down, I alone think of a crown. The dance that my life revolves is the joy that it involves. Jade struggled for years upon years, trying desperately to be happy after losing her father. And through this poem, she let us know that she achieved what she set out to do. She found joy. Some people go their entire lives without being at peace with who they are, and without knowing joy, but she managed to find it in spite of the odds. Having joy doesn't mean that life is perfect. Joy doesn't necessarily mean being happy all of the time. In Jade's case, knowing joy meant recognizing and accepting her self-worth. So after we leave here today, it would do all of us good to remember Jade's legacy. There's a reason why the legacies of people like St. Francis of Assisi, St. Joan of Arc, St. Augustine, and many more have been recorded for us. The Church does this so that we who are still alive can learn from them, both from the mistakes they made to the wonderful things they accomplished. In the same way, we should all learn from Jade's mistakes, but more importantly, we should learn from how wonderful she was. Let's all make a promise to live our lives trying our best to be kind, approachable, loving, loyal, courageous, strong, and committed, just like Jade. God bless you.